Hi, and welcome to All Things Divorce Podcast. I'm Launi Sheldon, the host of All Things Divorce Podcast. And today we have Chris Gorman with us. Chris is the managing partner of Gorman Consulting Group. Hi, Chris.
Hello.
He's in Arizona. It's an Arizona accounting firm that prides itself in complex accounting and financial issues and presenting them in an understandable manner. And he's really great at this. I've used Chris. Lots of attorneys in Arizona use Chris to help find money, figure out where money's going, value businesses and things like that. He is a certified fraud examiner from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and a master analyst in financial forensics from the National Association of Certified Evaluators and Analysts. For over 20 years, he has served as a court-appointed special master, receiver, and expert witness in various civil and family law matters. And we might actually want to do another podcast, if you're up for it, on a couple of those things to talk about them, because those are really interesting. And I know pro se litigants often have questions about those things. He has testified in, I've got to back up. He was just on the committee for determination of income for child support. And he will do expert testimony for determination of spousal income, like the needs, what is that for their standard of living? Is that what that
Standard
is?
of living, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that also the same with child support if somebody wants to deviate upwards or downwards?
Yes, yeah. Lots of deviation, a lot of income determination.
So he also will find all the fraud and embezzlement in your cases, and any other type of forensic and financial issues. He's testified numerous times. He's really great in court. Judges tend to love him. And he also, I didn't know that you did stuff for bankruptcy. So that's a new one, and civil litigation. So I guess I should have, everything's family law to me, right? So I didn't even take that. But what do you do for bankruptcy?
Well, we'll do feasibility stuff, but
Okay.
I mean, right now I'm probably 90% family law just because I like it.
Yeah, it's an interesting area, and you can help so much. It's good because for you, all the people trying to hide money, finding that's probably, kind of fun.
It is. I mean, it's sad too sometimes. That's the other side of it.
So he got his Bachelor of Science in Justice Studies, post-bachelorate certificate in accountancy. My bachelor's in accounts, the School of Accountancy at ASU also. And he served as the 2020 ex officio member of the Arizona Supreme Court's child support guidelines, which I was talking about earlier. And he has gotten glowing reviews by the Arizona Court of Appeals in recent decisions. And that means that what he says gets upheld, and that he's a credible, reliable witness. So that's, if you need someone, you want somebody who judges tend to like and believe. So just again, as my waiver, our podcast is for informational purposes only. We are not giving any legal advice. I am licensed only in Arizona. Chris is not giving any tax advice. So if, talk to your tax attorney, talk to an accountant, if you've got any questions about what we're going to discuss. And as usual, Chris's information will be in the okay, what's that section? The section below for the description section. That's what I was looking for. So, you said that you really only like to do, or you mostly like to do family law. I'm not going to say only because I don't want to cut you out of business. Yeah. But what is it that you do in family law cases specifically? Tell our audience.
Pretty much anytime money is involved, which is pretty much every family law case, we can be a benefit. Income determination, marital waste, child support, spousal support, tracing, which is a big chunk of my practice. I'll explain that later what that is. Dividing retirement accounts, tracing retirement accounts, anything like that. That's where we can really help out. As
an attorney, I just want to point out that, as an attorney, we can do lots of tracing, right? I love numbers. I can do tracing, but I can't testify about those numbers. I can't come in. I can't write an expert report and give it to the judge and show where money's gone. I could write, you know, a descriptive, you know, summary, but somebody's got to testify about that, and somebody's got to understand what that means. So just because, you know, if you as a litigant are trying to do it, it will take you a long time to be able to get in the evidence that you would need to get in to prove what Chris can prove more quickly in a report and then in quick testimony. And since we have such short trial times, I just wanted to point that out, because that's a big deal. I've done tracing, I've done those things, but getting it in versus having an expert getting it in is it's so much easier with an expert. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yes.
So in every project you get into, are they all complex matters?
No. You know, we'll do everything from trying to figure out what the income is of some landscaper that takes cash.
Oh,
you know, it's and that's
I'm sure that happens a lot. There's a lot of cash businesses out there.
There's a lot of cash businesses, and not everybody is honest with the IRS. You'd be surprised to know. So just because it's on a tax return doesn't mean that that's what actually happened. So that's where we can be very beneficial.
Now, I know we didn't talk about this, but I told you I was going to probably ask you questions. Oh, yeah. One of the things that I try and teach clients is that, you know, besides what's on the tax return, even if they are, you know, an honest person, I mean, an honest person can write off a lot of stuff that is not write-offable for child support purposes, like
yes,
depreciation and, you know, cars, you know, car depreciations, building depreciations, all kinds of dinners and entertainment and gifts and things that they are, you know, they might not get 100% of it back, but they do write it off. And so can you help with that also, with the kind of understanding the partnership agreements or taxes, K1s and things like that?
And that's part of the reason why in the new guidelines, they stopped using adjusted gross income. That was my advice was, don't use tax terms when you're not meaning something from a tax form.
Yeah, that's great. So what is it now?
Income for child support.
And that's just what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Don't go in and okay. Yeah,
because they were calling it AGI, and it's like, it's not AGI. It's income available for child support. So you've got to calculate income available for child support.
So okay, so when you do marital waste, and I mean, I'm not going to ask you to make a legal conclusion here, but what do you typically, because we get a lot of this, Chris, we get a lot of people saying it's waste, it's waste, it's waste. And, you know, sometimes golfing every day might be waste, but sometimes it's a hobby. And how much do you have to spend before a hobby becomes waste? So when you're talking about marital waste, what do you usually look for?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's knowing and accepting. So if somebody's been doing it throughout the entire marriage and you've been okay with it, it's not going to become waste at the end. If you have been fighting about it for years, then it could be a waste issue.
And what things do you typically look for?
Well, gambling's the most common thing that we're, you know, seeing a problem with. But if you know every weekend they're at the casino and you haven't filed for divorce in 10 years, you're not going to be able to convince a court that that's now marital waste.
So,
but if they were lying to you about going to the casino,
yeah,
then
I was able to find and prove $1 million waste claim on gambling, a prostitute, and drugs.
Yeah,
and hotels like right by the house where you know, wife had thought he had left town on business, but really he was in town with a prostitute gambling, and he went through $1 million, and he just would transfer it and in like retirement. So she didn't keep an eye on the retirement accounts, he did. And so he just sucked all the money out of the retirement accounts, and she had no idea.
Yeah, and we'll go through and, you know, plot ATM locations.
Yeah,
show the proximity to the casino.
So you do that in your research?
Yeah, because that's one of the tells, because you can't tell when somebody pulls cash out of an ATM what they're using it for. Because a lot of times they'll just say, "Oh, that was for food," or, you know, "I had to go pay the landscaper," or whatever it is. But if we can show, you know, they consistently take $500 out every Friday night, and then by 1 a.m. they're taking another 500 out, that's where it starts to prove that this is gambling. This is not just normal pocket money.
Right. So talk about missing assets, because that's very interesting to me. Are you saying that well, talk to me about that, because I don't think I understand.
So missing assets would be offshoring.
What is offshoring?
Offshoring is parking money in a foreign country.
Okay.
And you can do that some pretty creative ways. You can do that via your business. You can do that via in the individual. Now crypto is a tricky one, because you can see the cash come out and you can go to a crypto ATM and buy a coin and hide that forever. So that's an issue in marital.
Are you able to find that ever?
We're not going to be able to find the coin itself. What we're trying to prove is the missing money. And that's the nice thing about family court, is we just have to convince the judge that something's missing. We don't have to convince the court where it went. That's for the other side to explain.
Okay. And what about like unreported assets? So what does that look like?
So like an unreported asset would be something that you've parked in a family member's name,
okay.
Partnership interests that you have that are actually, we've seen everything where you're using dad's social security number for the K-1 so that it doesn't get reported to the IRS, to the individual. So those would be unreported things. Unreported income. If you've always taken the cash and you've put it underneath the bed, trying to figure out how much cash is under the bed is something that we try to do.
Oh, awesome. That doesn't seem like it would be an easy thing to do.
It's not. Cash is tricky, but there's things that you can do to try to win the argument.
So how far back do you go on like tax returns to say, oh, wow, interesting. There was some money here where there was, someone was earning interest or something, say on an account 5 years ago, but now it's gone.
Well, there's a mindset in what we do. And I was going to talk about this later, but creatures of habits. Humans are creatures of habit. And we're trying to find where that habit changes. So usually when we get brought in a case, we'll look at 5 years tax returns. That will give us kind of a history of what's kind of been going on. But if we're seeing something, we might expand that to, the entire marriage and maybe a year before marriage, so we can see what normal was before marriage. Because you're just looking for trends, like you were saying, like you were doing something and then all of a sudden it's gone. What bank were they using back then? What bank are they using now?
So if you're talking to somebody who's getting ready for a divorce, now I don't know, do people come to you before they're getting a divorce, sort of for divorce planning?
No, they usually go to you guys first.
And do we usually say go to?
And that's where the best advice can be given to them, especially on the financial side.
So what would you like them, if they're getting ready to get divorced, what would you like for them to know, how do they plan?
The best thing I can tell you is now is not a time to clean the garage or to get rid of the old documents. Too often you hear, well, there was an old file cabinet out in the garage and we just got rid of it. We just got it all shredded. And that was, the holy grail to what we needed. So don't do that.
Right. Because how late, do banks and financial institutions only keep them for 7 years?
It all depends. It drives me crazy because a lot of them will state that their policy is 6 to 7 years. But it comes down to how did you ask the question and who did you ask?
Oh, okay.
If you're a high net worth individual and you have a personal banker, you'd be shocked at how much information they can give you. And it's kind of annoying because the same subpoena, they'd come back and say they don't have it.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's good to know. That's really, really good to know. So, so you also say save computers and old documents and cell phones. Why the old cell phones?
The old cell phones, a lot of times you've had your emails on there.
Oh, yeah, good.
You have login information, especially with iPhones. There's old iPhone backups that might be in your iTunes library that have all of your communications or have your access communications. So if you guys, were texting back and forth regarding financial situations, that can be a treasure trove to helping us understand what was going on and what you were aware of.
So do you have someone in your office that could help someone? Like, I even have my old like BlackBerry, just because I've kept everything. Do you have someone in your office that can help sort of get that information out?
We do not do the forensic side of it, but we will take the image once they create it for us and sort through it. Because most of the computer guys don't know what to be looking for.
Right.
And that's more than half the battle, is knowing what to search for.
Right. So basically, if I've got my BlackBerry, I would take that to a computer guy, say, get information off of this for me, and then we give that to you.
Exactly. Same with hard drives, old computers, anything like that. We can dig through, and once we start to see what was going on, we're going to figure out the keywords that we need to be searching for. Now,
talk to me about and I know I'm sort of skipping around from what we had discussed, but what about the sole and separate tracing? Like, what do you look for that, and how do you do that?
And what that is, I say it's telling the story of how something that was pre-marriage or inherited, where it came from and where it went, because it's not always the same as where it started. So there's all kinds of tracing theory on that. Direct tracing, serial compound tracing. It's a area of family law that is poorly defined by the courts. So,
do you help define it?
Having a good storyteller is my job in that situation. Okay. What actually happened? Where did it go? Understanding the business transactions, looking at settlement statements, understanding what was sold, what was bought, how did the money flow between the transactions. We'll flow chart them. We'll write a narrative basically telling the story, and then we'll back it up with the accounting data.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people, that is problematic, especially, if they've been married a long time, say 20 years, it's really hard to find that sole and separate money.
But don't assume it's impossible.
I don't assume. That's why we hire you. I don't assume it's impossible, but I know it's hard. I know that the people who
we've done 25, 30-year marriages that we've been able to go back and prove the assets beforehand, and it's getting easier and easier with the internet. Recorded documents, all of that stuff is out there. So
do you? Okay, 30, 40 years. That's a long time, clearly. How do you? I guess I'm not understanding, like, how do you even find documentation for that? Are those people that you found them in like really good record keepers?
No, we've gone out there and been sleuths. We've gone to family members, partners. You'd be surprised what you can find when you go out there and ask these people. A lot of real estate deals, you have more than one partner, and maybe your partner kept all the boxes. Or maybe you have a family trust where everything's equal, and one of the siblings kept the trust documents. So we can go get those. Recorded documents, maricopa.gov, Arizona Secretary of State. You can really dig into those and find all those pieces and start to figure out what the story actually was. I don't know if we're allowed to mention cases, but it was a court of appeal, so it's and they actually cited my name. So the Chauncey v. Chauncey, if you really want to see what the mindset was on tracing lately.
Is that a recent one?
It was about a year and a half ago. And it's a long public, memorandum decision, so you can't actually cite it, but it gives you insight in what you can do, even if you're missing documents. Okay. Because you can rely on testimony. That's if you have somebody that remembers what happens, let them tell the story during the trial.
Yeah, and that's important for people to remember. Testimony is evidence. Yeah. And I know sometimes judges prefer that you have something to back up your testimony, especially if there's testimony going the other way. But storytelling and getting the important facts in and remembering what's important is really helpful for that. But How else can you get information if your client doesn't have it?
Well, subpoenaing banks, the power of the subpoena. But like I was saying with the banks, your best way to go to the banks is ask nicely first.
I've always had good luck. I've always had really good luck with banks. I am such a suck up to people because you don't go in there and go, I need my records now. That's not going to help you out. But if you're like, hey, we really got this issue and we're trying to figure out, what all you guys have, how can we get that? If you act nice, people tend to be nice in return.
Yes.
And so that's important, going in and acting like a jerk, not helpful.
You realize that a bank is usually a group of different divisions.
Right.
That's the other side of it. So if you had a home mortgage with Wells Fargo, that's a completely different department to subpoena than the checking and savings department. Or if you had a retirement account with Wells Fargo, that's a completely different subpoena than just your normal banking subpoena. So realize that you've got to go out there and cast a wide net.
Now, if somebody hires you, well, first of all, do you work for individuals or do you just work for attorneys?
I would prefer a client to have an attorney because I'm not an attorney. I'm not providing legal advice. There's been situations where I've gotten stuck with a pro per, but that's not my first choice, and I'd rather have somebody on the other side of the courtroom that knows how to ask the right question.
Right, and mine neither. I only do prepping work now. I don't litigate anymore. And the people I prep, I really prefer that they have an attorney because otherwise you do get roped into doing things you don't want to do. And I don't want to really give legal advice to clients anymore. I don't want that. I don't want to litigate. I don't want to do that anymore. It's too stressful.
No. Yeah.
So when you're talking about subpoenaing banks and getting the bank information, is it better for the person to go into the branch, or is it better to say, here's a subpoena?
It depends on their relationship. If you are, a higher net worth person that's always used that financial institution for like everything, they're going to be nicer to you if you walk into that branch. If you've gone in there before, bankers change constantly, but they can see how long you've been with the bank.
Right.
If you've moved financials, sometimes people just, want to bend over backwards for trying to help a client. And they will go through and dig through stuff. If you've got a financial advisor, a stockbroker or somebody like that, you're better off talking to them first. They might have their own Excel worksheets that they've been keeping through their career. They may have their own notes that even their institution doesn't realize that they have. And if you approach them nicely, they'll provide it. If you send a subpoena, they may act like they don't have anything because they don't want their institution knowing what they have and what they don't have.
Yeah, that's true. And okay, so I've got another question kind of off.
Sure. Like I said, my job is to answer questions.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I appreciate you letting me go off of what we discussed. Because I'm very curious. If I have a client who can't afford you, especially if I'm doing like pro bono stuff, and I'm trying to subpoena records. Like I've had this happen with domestic violence victims where I'm representing them either at a very low cost or not charging, other than costs. And so I've, oftentimes in domestic violence relationships, there is somebody hides money. Usually the abuser can hide money.
Yeah, controlling situation.
Right. And so I'm wondering if you have any tricks. Like what I would do is, okay, you subpoena the big banks, right? You subpoena the big ones. But then if you're not finding what is out there, do you start, plotting out banks near the person's house or office and start trying to subpoena there? Or what do you start looking for?
Going back to the creature of habit thing, if they banked with them 5 years ago and you kind of remember that, that's the first one to go to. Because people don't change institutions very often. And if they do, it's usually because the institution changed, not because they went to a different bank. It was, a failed institution that got rolled into something else. And then that's, going back to the tracing, that can be half our battle. It's just
Right,
plotting
right.
what financial institutions have, bought who, so the brokerage accounts flow to each other. But I think, being a little bit of a sleuth, if you remember mail coming in, maybe you didn't open it, but that might indicate one institution that they're using.
So if for some reason you got a B of A envelope and you've never used B of A, hey, maybe.
Yeah, unless it truly looks like junk mail.
Right.
And it might just be a blind solicitation. But if it looks like it's something, official, and at the same time, people use, the same investment firms for their banking. So if you've got a retirement account at Wells, odds are they're going to have a checking account at Wells.
Yeah, but that's sort of my question is if they do have that checking account at Wells, but that's not accounting for all the money's disappearing, and there's another bank. Do you have any tricks, or do you just kind of
grinding through it? We'll get all the statements for a period of time, get that data in there, sort through it, figure out if there's any transfers anywhere, if there's cashier's checks being written. If you write a cashier's check, it gets deposited somewhere. So if we can get that cashier's check, that will indicate where it went. It might give us an idea on the routing number of what institution it might have gone to. So you can do some sleuthing on the checking side. A lot of people now are using Zelle and Venmo and all of those things, trying to reconcile where money goes is our project. If there's a withdrawal of $300, and actually, let me go back to a better example. There was a case early on that I don't know everybody kind of remembers Bob Schwartz, and
everyone knows Bob Schwartz if you're a lawyer.
yeah. And we had a client that had opened a retirement account or a TD Ameritrade account to get a perk, to get like $200 deposit.
Right.
And opened the same account for the spouse and put the same money into that account to get the same perk. And we were looking at it going, well, okay, when they close them, we see the proceeds from one of them going into the community checking account. Well, the other one didn't go into that same checking account. So that means they went to a different bank when they got that check in the mail.
Okay, yeah.
So immediately we subpoenaed TD Ameritrade to get a copy of that check and find out that it was deposited in the bank that we didn't know existed.
Interesting. That's a good one. That's a good find.
And it's like creature of habit. If you know something came in and was supposed to go somewhere, where did it go?
Interesting. So have things changed now with the internet and with new technology?
I would say we can go through a ton more data than you could 10 years ago. With OCR, optical character recognition, we can dump bank statements into the computer, sort through them a lot quicker than we used to be able to.
Do you have a program for that or something?
Yeah, we've kind of scripted some stuff on our own.
Oh, awesome.
So that can save a lot of time and money, because getting the data into the system is the hardest part.
Right.
Getting the data, getting into the system, and then figuring out what you're missing. That's kind of the cycle of our projects.
So yeah, before you probably had to do data entry, and you don't have to do that now because even I guess like Quicken, right? Those programs can just download everything in the bank.
It can pull it off.
Right.
Yeah. And I think eventually we're going to get to the point where most of our data comes in electronic format.
Right.
We're not there right now. Almost everything comes in a printed bank statement or a PDF.
Yeah.
So it's converting that PDF back into electronic data.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I guess you could just ask for their password and their code, but maybe people aren't real happy about giving that out.
And usually not the other side. Yeah.
Right.
Our clients are usually willing to do it, but not the other side.
So where do you see like the biggest hiding of money? Where do you go? There's another one of those.
Biggest hiding of money.
Yeah. Like, what do you find is the most common way for people to hide
There
money?
are so many tricks out there. I don't want to teach people. some of the stuff that we've seen. I would say it's a lot of times it's just purely stuff being missed.
Okay.
That can happen. There's crazy things like overpaying taxes.
Now that's also true, because another one is overpaying a lawyer.
Overpaying a lawyer, getting the refund after the case is done.
Yeah, overpaying your accountant.
Yeah, you can overpay taxes all day long. I mean, you can do it with every tax. You can do it with your state taxes, with your federal taxes.
Yeah, but
and
you could
eventually send you a refund, but it might be long enough that you hid the money away.
Yeah, you could overpay your credit card payments. You could overpay. That's
parking with family.
Right.
Paying what I would call fraudulent debts to family members.
Something that's really new is Venmo.
Oh, yeah.
Are you seeing much of that action?
Yeah, I mean, luckily the dollar volumes aren't a whole, not super material. But that is definitely a way that you can quickly send money to friends.
Right.
We've used actually Venmo's come up more on income determination or lifestyle analysis, because when people go out to the bars and stuff,
and they
Venmo their buddy to pay the bar tab, getting those records, because usually they'll write a note.
Right.
Say, hey, Friday night, thanks for the drinks. Here's $200.
Now, have you seen those in subpoenas, or do people just like screenshot? Like when I transfer Venmo, I put all my stuff private. I find it so weird.
You'd be shocked at how many times people don't mark things private, and that's where we see, the spouse will come in and say, well, here's all the Venmo activity that I can see. or
yeah, it's like, what are you doing? I don't understand it at all.
And if you've ever sent money to somebody or received money, you get to see their whole history. So it's silly. It's like, I help with my kids' sports teams, and when people have Venmo me for sports team stuff, now they're in my feed. And I'm like,
it just
really
comes up automatically.
They paid their house cleaning.
Right.
Their house cleaner got $50 last week. All right, that's great, but who cares?
Yeah, well, I want, if they can get a housekeeper for $50, I would care. All of a sudden I care.
That was not a true example.
Yeah, well, is there any other tips? Are there any other tips that you can give our listeners?
Yeah.
On kind of what to watch out for when they're going through a divorce and they know that their spouse is being a little bit tricky on some stuff.
I would say hire us early. Don't wait till the end. We can be way more helpful early on, and it'll usually end up saving you money hiring us earlier. People think, oh, I can put off the expert till the end, and maybe I can avoid hiring an expert completely. But us coming in the last minute, trying to figure out what's been going on, costs way more than if we just started at the beginning and we know what subpoenas have been issued and we know where they stand. We know what we've received. It's just easier from that standpoint to manage the case, and we're happier with you if we came in early. We also say that, we don't have allegiance to anybody. So if you call us first, you get to hire us.
Yeah, that's true. I say that for my prepping. I'm like, listen, if you're not hiring me, the other side probably is. If you've got that kind of case where your services are needed, they're probably needed by both sides.
Yes.
Or they're often
it's almost always a battle of the experts.
Right.
So having the good one on your side is extremely beneficial. And we will work with you on scope. That's the other side of it. If you're sitting there saying, well, I think, he's been hiding money, we'll interview the client and try to figure out, okay, well, what window of time would this most likely occur? And is it a few months before the marriage started to fall apart? Or has the marriage been falling apart for 5 years or 10 years? Or, did you find out about the girlfriend 6 months ago? Like, when did things happen? And let's narrow in on what we want to look at.
And also a question that I'm sure you get, or that our listeners might be interested in knowing, is at what point is it worth it? Like, how much money does someone have to want to find or have to find to make it worth it? And not just financially, right? You don't want to spend $5,000 to find 500.
I don't want to waste people's money. At the end of the day, I've got enough clients and enough work that I don't need to do that. So if I'm getting into a project and I'm not seeing anything, I'll be honest.
Okay. Yeah, and if somebody's only saying, I think he, took $10,000 here, and you're looking at $10,000, it's like, listen, it's going to cost you 3 to 5 to find that 10,000, and it's going to be a headache. Whereas maybe you go to mediation, and
the problem is
and write it off.
In fraud examination, they call it the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Yep.
And that's always the problem, and painfully it can be true. Where that $10,000 that was missing, could be just one piece of a $300,000 account that you don't know about.
Right.
So it's hard to say. I've got a pretty good BS detector. So listening to the story, figuring out what they're seeing, do we have probable cause if you're going to go there?
Do you
to
attend
really start digging into it?
Speaking of your sort of BS meter, do you attend any depositions or anything?
I do. I love attending depositions because with my fraud examining training, body manner and all of that, and the way that they answer questions, and just the extra pressure of me sitting in that room next to the attorney can get you completely different answers than would have been without me sitting in there.
Right. That's so true. The pressure of more people, of bigger people, of, they're all dressed in suits as opposed to you who's in jeans and maybe not feeling now uncomfortable because you didn't dress for it or plan for it, can be a big deal.
And one of the things I do often is write on post-it notes and hand it to the attorney. Because when you're asking a question, you don't always have the focus to be able to hear what the answer actually was. So having somebody like me as an advisor sitting next to the attorney, I can say, well, they didn't really answer the question. Right. Or they left it open. Follow up with this one and see how they answer it.
Yeah, I mean, that's so great to have an expert in there with you in trial, in depositions, in mediations, and really the whole, at least, or available by phone, I think, for mediations, at least, so that we can ask questions.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've done a fair amount of is what I would call umpiring, where it's effectively a joint retention. One side says something happened, the other side says a different thing happened. And what do the facts say? And I'll get in there and figure out what actually happened in the transaction and tell the truth. And either side can call me to the stand if it goes to trial, or they can at least use that leverage to try to resolve the issue. Okay,
so I'm going to say it because I know you've heard it. My husband paid, so of course he's going to find in favor of my husband. What are your thoughts on that?
No, we're not a bought opinion. My reputation is worth a lot more than your husband's $9,000 or $10,000.
See, that's one thing that I've always, that's where I always talk to people when they say, this evaluator, business evaluator, or this psych evaluation, because he's paying it, they're going to work for him and they're going to do whatever he wants. And
I wish there weren't those people in this world. There are those people in this world.
For sure.
I'm not one of them. If you want a bought opinion, I'll send you to somebody else.
Yeah, perfect. And I agree 100%. I mean, there are people. Look, you can pay any expert to say, or not any expert, you can pay many experts to say what you want them to say. But there's a reason that you're respected by the court. There's a reason that you're respected by attorneys who say, hey, what if we just jointly, ask Chris to do this?
There's usually enough confusion in the facts,
right?
that there's enough difference in opinion. So and that's trying to let the judge understand where the difference is between experts can be very beneficial.
Yeah, that's
that expert thinks it's this, we think it's this. It's really up to you, Your Honor, to decide where you fall. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing, Your Honor. It doesn't have to be balls and strikes.
Right. But you're really good at then saying, this is why I don't believe that expert's testimony is correct. You can see the mistake here, here, and here. Yeah. And I didn't do that because of A, B, and C. And this is what the guidelines would say.
Yeah.
And this is
Or if
what-
my assumption is different than their assumption, then that's what it comes down to.
right.
And that can be an issue in a case where you don't have a lot of case law.
Because your facts are only as good as the information that comes into you.
Yeah.
So you
exactly.
may have to make some assumptions.
Yep. And sometimes we don't have all the facts. So
Right. Of course. Well, thank you, Chris, so much for being here. I appreciate it. And I look forward to maybe having you on again to talk about some of these other issues that we
Sure.
brought up. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.